sunny, beautiful afternoon. You know, I was leaving Washington this morning and I was wondering, should I take my coat or not? Right decision. Good. Let me thank Anthony and Leslie Kao for singing the national anthem. Let me thank the Sean Michael Dargan Band. Let me thank James Alexander for his remarks. And let me thank Sarah Trongone for introducing me. And most of all, thank you all very much for being out this afternoon to complete the political revolution and transform this country. And I want to emphasize that what this campaign is about is not just winning the Democratic nomination. It is not just defeating Donald Trump, the most dangerous president in modern American history. But it is about all of us, not me, us, transforming this country. That is what this is about. This weekend, I will be not only here in Wisconsin, but in Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. 4 years ago, despite losing the popular vote by 3 million votes, Donald Trump carried all of those states and won enough electoral votes to be elected president. Together, we are going to make sure that that does not happen again. We're going to win here in Wisconsin. We're going to win in Indiana. We're going to win in Ohio. We're going to win in Michigan. We're going to win in Pennsylvania. And together, we're going to win this election. Now, obviously, in our country, people have different points of view. Here in Wisconsin, in my state of Vermont, and all across the nation, and that is what democracy is about. You have your point of view, I have mine. But I happen to believe that whether you are a progressive or a conservative or a moderate, you are not proud that today we have a president of the United States who is a pathological liar. And I have talked to many conservatives who hold that view. The president of the United States becomes in many ways a model for the children of this country, and there are very few people who are proud that we have a leader today who lies all of the time. And in fact, he has lied thousands of times since he has been president and when he was on the campaign trail. And of all of the lies, little and small, that he has told, the biggest lie of all was when he said during the campaign that he was going to defend the interests of the working class of our country and that he was going to take on the powerful special interest to do that. What a monstrous lie that was. And let me give you just a few examples. As many of you recall, here in Wisconsin and all across the country, Trump told the American people that he would provide health care to everybody. Remember that? As president, Trump did exactly the opposite. Today, under the Trump administration, 7 million people have already lost their health insurance, and even more frighteningly, Trump vigorously supported an effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act and throw 32 million Americans off the health care they currently have. And I say to Donald Trump, trying to throw 32 million Americans off their health insurance is not defending the working class of this country. During his campaign, as many of you will recall, Donald Trump said, hey, I'm a different type of Republican. I'm not going to cut Medicare. I'm not going to cut Medicaid. I'm not going to cut Social Security. People like Paul Ryan would do that. Not me. I won't do it. But I want all of you to know, and I want the people of Wisconsin to know, that Trump's budget that he brought forth in March would cut Medicaid by $1.5 trillion, cut Medicare by $845 billion, and the last two budgets he brought forth would make cuts in Social Security as well. All of you know that Medicaid covers 2/3 of the nursing home care costs in this country. So I want you to think about the families in Wisconsin, in Vermont, and around the nation who have moms or dads dealing with Alzheimer's who are now in a nursing home. When you cut $1.5 trillion from Medicaid, I don't know what happens to those people or what happens to the families who are trying to take care of them. Cutting $1.5 trillion from Medicaid and over $800 billion from Medicare is not supporting the working families of this country. Trump promised when he ran for office here in Wisconsin, all over the country, that he promised the American people that the rich will not be gaining at all under his tax plan. Remember that one? Well, shock of all shock, that turned out to be a major lie. Turns out that over a 10-year period, 83% of all of the tax breaks went to the top 1%. And the result of that is that today we have corporations like Amazon. Anyone know how much Amazon paid in federal income taxes? Now, how insane is that you have a widely profitable corporation owned by the wealthiest guy in America not paying a nickel in federal income taxes? And that's true for General Motors, Chevron, IBM, Eli Lilly, and many, many other corporations. Trump's tax proposals did not benefit working families. They benefited the wealthy and large corporations. During his campaign, Trump promised the American people that he would substantially reduce the trade deficit and prevent the outsourcing of American jobs. But since Trump has been in the White House, the trade deficit has gone up by $120 billion. And his own Labor Department certified that 185,000 American jobs have been shipped overseas under his watch. During his campaign, and I remember the ad that he ran, it was really a very good ad. He said, I, Donald Trump, we're going to stand up to Wall Street. Remember that? Oh, yeah. And we're going to reinstate the Glass-Steagall Act. Well, Trump has certainly stood up to Wall Street by signing legislation to deregulate Wall Street and provide large financial institutions with a massive, massive tax cut. He didn't stand up to Wall Street. He did the bidding of the large Wall Street banks. Trump's tax plan increased bank profits by nearly $29 billion. Donald Trump, you didn't stand up to Wall Street. You let your billionaire friends get away with murder. And that's just some of the lies that Trump told the American people. And I can understand why people voted for Trump based on what he said. And the reason for that is that in Wisconsin and all over this country, there are a lot of people who are hurting. There is a lot of pain out there. People are working 2 or 3 jobs. They're worried about their kids. They can't afford health care, can't afford to send their kids to college. And Trump said, the political establishment is not listening to you. I will listen to you. Well, the truth is that for too long, the political establishment in Congress did not listen to the needs of working families. Unfortunately, Trump lied when he said that he would listen to their pain. So our job in this campaign is to reach out to working families who are hurting and to work with them to finally create a government and an economy that works for all of us and not just the 1%. That is what the American people want. They're tired of being lied to. They're tired of seeing the very, very rich getting richer while we have 40 million people living in poverty and veterans sleeping out on the street. Now, today, I want to welcome you to a campaign which says, with confidence, with optimism, and with love, that the underlying principles of our government will not be greed, will not be kleptocracy, will not be hatred, will not be lies. The underlying principles of our government will not be racism, will not be sexism, will not be homophobia, will not be xenophobia, will not be religious bigotry. Those are ugly, anti-American sentiments, and together we are going to end all of that. The principles of our government will be based on a time-honored American belief in justice, economic justice, social justice, racial justice, and environmental justice. Donald Trump wants to divide our country up based on the color of our skin, based on our gender, based on where we were born, based on our religion and our sexual orientation. What we are going to do and what the American people want is exactly the opposite. We are going to bring our people together. Black and white, Latino, Native American and Asian American, gay and straight, native-born and immigrant, men and women. That is what this campaign is about. It is bringing people together around an agenda that works for all of us. And when I talk about justice, let me tell you very exactly, very specifically what it means. It means that we will no longer tolerate a nation which has more income and wealth inequality than almost any other major country on earth, and it is worse now than at any time since the 1920s. Now, I know that not a lot of people talk about it in Congress, and the media doesn't talk about it, but we will not accept a situation in which the three wealthiest families in America own more wealth than the bottom half of the United States. Where 20% of our children are living in poverty, 30 million Americans have no health insurance, and yet 49% of all new income goes to the top 1%. That is not the America we want to see. Justice means that we will no longer see half of the people in our country live paycheck to paycheck. Half of the people. Do you know what that means, living paycheck to paycheck? It means that if your car breaks down, you can't get to work. And if you can't get to work, you get fired. And if you get fired, you can't take care of your kids. It means that you stay up nights worrying that your mom or your kid will not get sick and end up in the hospital because you cannot afford to pay the hospital bills. In the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, half of our people should not be forced to live paycheck to paycheck. And when we talk about justice, we end the absurdity of CEOs of major corporations earning 300 times what their workers are making. And when we talk about justice, we end the situation in which 25 hedge fund managers on Wall Street make double the amount of money of all of the kindergarten teachers in this country, 140,000 teachers. Can you believe that? 25 hedge fund managers. And when we talk about ending injustice in this country, we are talking about ending the racial injustice that currently exists. At a time of overall massive levels of inequality and disparity, the situation is clearly much worse for black families. It is not acceptable to me or to you that African American families own 1/10 of the wealth of white families, that infant mortality rates within the African American community is 2.5 times that in white communities. So when we talk about justice, we are talking about ending institutional racism in all of its form all over this country. And let me say a word to the young people of our country. At a time when we have experienced an explosion in technology and a huge increase in worker productivity, we will no longer accept a situation in which, for the first time in the modern history of our country, the younger generation, if we don't turn it around, will have a lower standard of living than their parents. The younger people are leaving school deeply in debt. They can't find affordable housing. They have less social mobility. Now, I've got 4 kids and 7 beautiful grandchildren. Downward mobility is not acceptable to me, and it's not acceptable to the American people. This campaign is about moving people up, not down. But it is not just a fight for economic justice that we are waging. We are also waging a fight to end the corrupt political system which allows the rich to get richer at the expense of everybody else. Now, I have a very radical idea. You want to hear a really radical idea? All right, hold on to your hats. Now, the right-wing media is going to go nuts on this one. I believe, and I'm saying it right here, in one person, one vote. Oh! Now, how radical an idea is that? And that means that we're going to end a political system which allows billionaires to buy elections. We are going to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. And we are going to move toward public funding of elections. Because I want more people to be participating in the political process. And I don't care what your views are. If you want to run for office, you're progressive, you're conservative, whatever you are, you should be able to run for office without begging wealthy people for campaign contributions. And I want to say another word about democracy. I have run for office in the state of Vermont on many occasions. Sometimes I've lost, more often I've won. But I can tell you from the bottom of my heart it has never, ever occurred to me, nor do I think the vast majority of candidates in this country, to figure out a way about how we could keep people from voting who might be voting against us. So I say to those cowardly Republican governors who are working overtime to suppress the vote, to make it harder for people of color or poor people or young people to vote, what I say to them, if they are afraid to participate in free, fair, and open elections, they should get the hell out of politics and get another job. Now, a few years ago, when I was here in Wisconsin, and by the way, Wisconsin, thank you very much for the support you gave me in 2016. We won a great victory here. But all of you will recall, you'll all recall that here in Wisconsin and wherever we went around the country, the ideas that we brought forth 4 years ago were considered by the political establishment and by the media establishment to be ideas that were radical, that were extreme, that were ideas that nobody in America supported. Well, I think it's fair to say that things have changed over the last 4 years. Now, I want you to remember this. When we talked about raising the minimum wage to a living wage, the establishment said, too radical. And when we dared say that health care is a human right, too radical. And when we talked about investing $1 trillion to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure and create up to 15 million good-paying jobs, we were told that it was too radical. And I was asked, I remember this, on a national TV debate, and the moderator said, well, tell me, what do you think the major national security crisis facing the country is? And there are many of them. And I think the person thought that I would say, well, it's ISIS or it's Al-Qaeda. And the answer I gave was climate change. Well, 4 years ago, that was a radical idea. It ain't a radical idea today. 4 years ago, when we talked about criminal justice reform, we talked about ending the war on drugs and legalizing marijuana. And we were told, oh my God, too radical an idea. Well, state after state is doing just that, finally. And when we talked about reforming our broken criminal justice system and our broken immigration system, we were told that those ideas were too radical as well. And here is another idea that 4 years ago seemed so radical, and that is, how could you possibly run for President of the United States without having a super PAC and begging billionaires for campaign contributions? And here is one more idea which does not appear quite so radical today. 4 years ago, we talked about ending the power of superdelegates at the Democratic National Convention. Well, a funny thing happened over the 4 years. And what you in Wisconsin did in the 21 other states that we won, and the 13+ million votes that we received, and the fact that we ended up receiving more votes from young people than Trump and Clinton combined, what all of that showed is that those ideas were not radical ideas. They were common sense American ideas that the American people supported. And today, 4 years later, those very ideas are supported by Democratic candidates from school board to President of the United States. In other words, we have made real progress in transforming the political debate in America. People now understand that those ideas are not radical, but those ideas are exactly what we need in our country. And let me tell you today exactly what the agenda is that I am running on for president. So today we say as straightforwardly as we can to the private health insurance companies that whether you like it or not, we are going to end the international embarrassment of the United States being the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right. We will no longer accept the absurdity of spending twice as much per capita on health care as the people of any other country, while we have lower life expectancy rates than other countries and worse health care outcomes than other countries. In America, if you get sick, no matter what your income is, you should be able to walk into a doctor's office. In America, if God forbid you end up in a hospital, you should not have to worry about going bankrupt. So yes, we are going to take on the hundreds of millions of dollars spent by the healthcare industry, and we will pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. Now, let me tell you something. Let me just tell you something. This is not going to be an easy fight. And I want you to know this is not just another piece of legislation that's going to get passed inside the Beltway. That's not the way it happens. I look at health care and Medicare for all in exactly the same way that I looked at the labor movement when millions of workers stood up and fought back and said they were sick and tired of being exploited. I look at Medicare for all in the same way as I look at the civil rights movement, where African Americans and their white allies said together, we are going to end racism and segregation and Jim Crow in America. And I look at health care as a human right in the same way as I look at the women's movement, where women stood up and fought back and said, we will not be second-class citizens. And I look at Medicare for all in the same way as I look at the struggles of the gay movement, when the gay community said, we are sick and tired of being discriminated against, and we will love whoever we choose, regardless of their gender. My point is that the fight for Medicare for all, the fight for health care as a human right, is a struggle that has got to take place at the grassroots level. Because when millions of people stand up and say, you know what, I'm entitled to health care, my kids are entitled to health care, my disabled friends are entitled to health care, and every American is entitled to health care. And when millions of people stand up, believe me, the United States Congress will hear them. And when we talk about health care, we are talking about taking on the greed of the pharmaceutical industry, who are charging us by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Now, you want to hear about a dysfunctional healthcare system. All right, I'll tell you. Now, this is really crazy stuff. And that is that last year, the 5 major drug companies made $50 billion in profits. These CEOs make outrageous compensation packages, and yet 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford to fill the prescriptions that their doctors write. I mean, just think how insane that is. People go to the doctor, they're sick, doctor writes a prescription, they can't afford to fill it. So we are going to tell the pharmaceutical industry that we in this country are not going to pay any more for prescription drugs than the people of other countries, which means we're going to lower prescription drug prices by 50%. And today we say to Walmart and we say to McDonald's and other low-wage employers, pay your workers a living wage. People cannot make it on $8, $9, $10 an hour. In America, if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. Now, I'm proud that together we have pressured Amazon and Disney to raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour. And 6 states in the United States have already passed legislation for a $15 an hour minimum wage. And a few weeks ago, the United States House of Representatives Education and Labor Committee reported out legislation to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. We have come a long way in 4 years, but we need a mass movement to make sure that nobody in this country is working at starvation wages. When we talk about priorities in America, we should not be proud of the fact that in America we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. And we have a child care system that is out of control. If you are a working parent, you have the right to know that your kid is in a quality pre-K program and that the staff is paid living wages. And that is why we understand that the early years of a human development from 0 to 4 are the most important, intellectually and emotionally. And that is why we are going to implement universal, affordable pre-K. And here is another idea that 4 years ago was considered to be radical, ain't so radical now. And that is that in the United States, we know we are living in a competitive global economy. We need to have the best educated workforce in the world. Good jobs require a good education, and that is why we are going to make public colleges and universities tuition-free. How many of you are dealing with student debt? All right, together we are going to substantially lower student debt. Here in Wisconsin, the average student debt is $30,000 per graduate. That is pretty crazy. If you go to medical school, you go to law school, it's a lot higher than that. So if the United States Congress, in its wisdom, could bail out Wall Street for $1 trillion, you know what I think? I think we could substantially lower student debt in this country. And today, we say to Donald Trump and the fossil fuel industry that although it may not seem at this moment, climate change is not a hoax. And the truth is I think all of you know, that climate change is an existential threat to our country and the entire planet. And together, we are going to take on the lies and the greed of the fossil fuel industry. You know what they remind me of? Some of you may have known that 50, 60 years ago, the tobacco industry was telling the American people that cigarettes were not harmful. You don't know that? And as a result of that, millions of people, including my own father, died. People smoked 2 or 3 packs of cigarettes, and there were these ads on television. Hey, cigarettes are not harmful. The tobacco executives went before a congressional committee. Oh, they held up their hands. We have no evidence to believe that tobacco is harmful. They lied. And the fossil fuel industry, their scientists know it. They know that what the scientists tell us, that if we do not significantly and aggressively cut carbon emissions, according to the best scientists in the world, there will be irreparable harm to this planet within the next 12 years. We have a moral responsibility to our children and our grandchildren to leave them a planet which is healthy and is habitable. And we are going to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And when we do that, we're going to create millions of good-paying jobs. And today we say to the prison industrial complex that whether they like it or not, they are no longer going to make money by locking up fellow Americans. We are going to bring about long overdue real criminal justice reform. This is America. We should not be having more people in jail than any other country on earth. We should not be spending $80 billion a year locking up people in this country. Instead of spending $80 billion a year on jails and incarceration, we're going to invest in our young people, in jobs and education. And when we talk about criminal justice reform, that means no more private prisons or detention centers, no more war on drugs, no more keeping people in jail because they are too poor to afford cash bail. And when we talk about criminal justice, we're going to change a system by which millions of people now have criminal records because of possession of marijuana, while the CEOs on Wall Street who destroyed this economy, who created a situation in which millions of people lost their homes, their jobs, and their life savings, those crooks, not one of them went to jail. We're going to change that type of system. We believe in equal justice under the law. If you're a Wall Street executive and you break the law, you pay the price. And today we say that instead of demonizing the undocumented immigrants in our country, we're going to pass comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship. We're going to provide legal status to the 1.8 million young people eligible for the DACA program. And we're going to develop a humane border policy for those who seek asylum. No more snatching babies from the arms of their mothers. And today we say to the military industrial complex that we want a strong defense, but we do not need to spend more than the next 10 nations combined. We are going to invest in affordable housing. We're going to invest in public education. We are not going to invest in never-ending wars. And by the way, I'm happy to tell you that the House and the Senate recently passed a resolution using the War Powers Act successfully for the first time in 45 years to end U.S. involvement in the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen. And that is just the beginning of getting Congress to retake its constitutional responsibility on issues of war. And today we say to the 1% in profitable corporations, people who have never had it so good, that under our administration, we're going to end the massive tax breaks and loopholes that they currently enjoy. We're not going to accept a situation where major profitable corporations pay zero in taxes. The wealthy and large corporations will start paying their fair share of taxes. Now, when I use we use the phrase, us, not me, that is not just a good bumper sticker. It is a good bumper sticker, but it's more than that. And this is what it means, and maybe the most important point that I want to make, and something very few candidates will tell you. And that is that no president, not Bernie Sanders, not anybody else, no matter how well-intentioned or honest that person may be, no president of the United States can do it alone. Because the power of the establishment, the power of Wall Street, of the insurance companies, of the drug companies, of the corporate media, of the prison industrial complex, of the military industrial complex. These people have unlimited amounts of money, and they have incredible power. So when we use the phrase, us, not me, what it means is that we need to engage in an unprecedented grassroots effort in which millions of people stand up and they look around them and they say, you know what, this status quo is not working for us. It may be working for billionaires. It is not working for us. And if we stand together, and if we don't allow Trump and his friends to divide us up, we can take these folks on and we can defeat them. And what we do in the White House together is we create a federal jobs guarantee. You want a job in America, you will have a job because there is more than enough work to be done. When we are in the White House, we're going to do what the American people want, and that is end the epidemic of gun violence and pass common sense gun safety legislation. And when we together are in the White House, we are going to protect a woman's right to control her own body. You know, I get more than tired of hearing my conservative friends and my conservative colleagues in the Senate saying, get the government off of the backs of the American people. They tell us about small government. Let the American people do what they want. Deregulate everything. Well, if you believe in small government, if you believe in getting the government out of the lives of the American people, then you must support a woman's right to control her body, not the federal government. Not the federal government, the state government, or the local government. Brothers and sisters, we are in a pivotal moment in American history and in world history. In this country and in many parts of the world, there is a growing movement toward authoritarianism and oligarchy. There is a growing movement toward racism and bigotry. It's going on not only in the United States, where we're seeing an increase in hate crimes, where we have a president who is trying to win cheap political votes by demonizing minorities. That is what's going on. And what this election is about is whether we strengthen democracy or whether we move toward oligarchy. It's about whether we bring our people together or we have national leadership that tries to divide us up. It is about whether we have grassroots activism or whether we have billionaires who continue to control the economic and political life of the nation. In my view, if we are prepared to stand up to Trump and his desire to divide us up, if we understand we cannot allow him to demonize minorities, to demonize undocumented immigrants, if we understand that there is no such thing as a blue state or a red state, but that in every state in this country, working people are struggling to take care of their families. If we are prepared to roll up our sleeves and get involved in the political process, if we are prepared to do all of that, at the end of the day, what we know is that the 1% may have unlimited amounts of money and they may have an enormous amount of power. But at the end of the day, the 1% is 1%. And I may not be a great mathematician, but the 99% is a lot more than the 1%. So, brothers and sisters, we are fighting for the future of this country. We're fighting for democracy. We're fighting to protect our children and our parents. We are fighting to preserve the planet. This is no time for anybody to be talking about being depressed or in despair. Now is the time to get to work. Now is the time to transform this country. Now is the time to win this election. Thank you all very much.